Okay, let's see what this looks like now.
Fuck. Wait, are you just playing that in repeat? You fuck, you fuck, you fuck.
Yeah, the best part about mine is it's just me saying no.
No.
Next,
No.
post to Twitter, recording podcast.
The best part is that it's just Randall saying kill. You don't even
Except it's not saying fuck, but when I record it, telling you go kill, fuck.
The two things on James's mind.
Fuck, kill!
Well,
Are we all plugged in?
Oh, I think tap
Tap.
or just say something.
Hold it.
Okay.
You need
Hold.
to leave your finger.
What?
Well, James is in.
No.
Cross it.
Randall's in,
Okay. Am I in?
and you're in.
Yay.
Praising Boosh. Now I want to watch 2001: A Space Odyssey.
That's a good movie. I haven't seen it in a long time.
I think he's breathing in and doing this at the same time.
Isn't it? What is it? Is it the Tibetan group that can do that? They actually can form multiple tones.
Oh yeah, I mean it is possible to actually harmonize with yourself.
Yeah.
It requires a very specific skill set or very
Yeah.
specific vocal abilities.
It's
I think
it's
Mike Patton can
it's
do
Tibet. It's like, but there's a bunch of like.
Not quite that, but
No.
it's like deep throat singing or something.
it. Deep-throated singing.
No,
It's either a Tibetan or a Nepalese thing. I think. but
the
I can't
Tibetan
remember.
singer people.
Yeah.
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 I have a Tibetan sing. Well, I used to have a Tibetan singing bowl, and you just go bing, and then you rub your.
Oh yeah, and it
Vocal
makes
thing
a
around it.
sound.
Yeah.
I should try the apricot now that we've managed to. I've recorded for posterity what happens when we're recording a podcast. I'll tell you what we can do. When we're living closer and have the balcony, we can occasionally have a drink.
Maybe.
I hate you.
You
Fine.
realize
I
you
will
realize
drink,
it.
I will drink and throw beer bottles at your patio.
You're not close enough to be able to hit my patio. From
It's
your
all about the
balcony.
angle, and believe me, I'm going to have a lot of time and a lot of.
You are way, way more likely to hit my upstairs neighbors than you are to hit my
sheer
patio.
volume of bottles.
So when she gets back from China, there's just gonna be all this broken glass on her patio, right?
No, because I'll be in her apartment when she's
Yeah,
in China.
he's apartment sitting for me. What are those looks for? Wait, is everybody already drunk in this room except me?
No.
No.
Here's
Okay,
the
good.
thing.
I've
like
been alone all day
5
with nothing
sips.
but my clothes.
Wait, what were you doing with your clothes?
Do you know I have 12 pairs of shoes?
Wait, you've been
Do you
counting
want to
them? That's
know
what you
how
did?
many
still have
pairs
12
of
pairs of
shoes
shoes.
I have?
No, I know.
You're a
but
girl.
I know how many pairs of shoes you have because I have to walk over them every time I go into your
Oh
apartment.
yeah, I should put those away before I leave.
Also, I
shouldn't
have to share your car with 2 pairs of them that sit in my footwell.
I really need to bring those back in the house.
So you spent your day counting your clothes?
Jamming as many clothes as I can into
Packing.
suitcases. My suitcase is
Okay,
now
right.
full.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
Do you need more suitcases? Because you can borrow some of mine.
I might need some more suitcases.
Okay.
Also, I have a cooler of yours that you lent me while you went away.
Keep it.
I don't want it. It's covered in dust and cobwebs.
You could also fill the cooler with stuff and
I
use
could,
that.
That's a good idea.
Well, for transporting all the massive amounts of food, which I need to take out of my fridge and then clean my fridge because my fridge is disgusting.
Yeah, that's going to be the annoying part, but yeah, it'll get done.
I can lend you cleaning supplies.
Could you help me clean?
Depends on when you're gonna clean.
Anytime.
Probably not. This week is no. This week is gonna be crazy. I've already gone over this.
This
with
week's
you.
crazy for me. It's really inconvenient. I have to move.
Yeah, this week's crazy for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a paper deadline for the 8th.
I'm leaving to go overseas for a month, and I'm testing a methodology that we've never tested before with equipment that I don't know if it'll
Come on,
work.
Amanda.
I've got to
go
write up an exam,
I-
I've got a paper deadline, and I've also got a grant.
I spend a month at home to go overseas and then do stuff that no one's ever done before.
This is
Wait,
not
what?
quite the same. You're living here. Not at all the same.
But on paper,
On paper.
On paper, it's the same.
Anyway,
On paper, indeed.
I'll see what I can do, but I can't guarantee anything.
that's okay.
Maybe Tuesday
I
evening.
don't expect much from you.
Oh wait, you move on Tuesday though.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, if you don't have to turn the key over until
I have to turn it over the day I move.
Right, we'll split into 2 teams. We'll have the moving team and Amanda. Amanda will clean the fridge while we move.
except
I
that
feel like you're like... there's an unfair gender
Okay,
bias.
Curtis, you're now on the cleaning team.
No,
Fine.
Randall can clean it with fire.
Yeah, that's true.
that's right. Let's just assign Randall to clean everything.
Fire.
20 minutes later, we've made a horrible mistake.
To be fair, the fridge probably needs replacing. Okay, hey guys. Welcome to Patio After Dark, recorded slightly before dark today, but nearly dark.
Nearly dark.
Yeah.
Paleo nearly after dark.
Yep.
Paleo, we're getting closer to being after dark.
But it's June, so the days are longer.
It's not... Oh, Christ, it is.
Yeah, it is.
It's
Yeah.
okay, summer's just started. I've got 2 months to do what I wanted to do by the end of the summer.
Deep breaths.
I need to start it and stop doing other stuff.
No, summer hasn't officially started yet, has it?
No, actually, it hasn't. It doesn't start until June 20th.
Although by the time this goes up, it will have started.
Oh, yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah.
No.
No, you're right. It will just before.
Just
not
before.
started.
before.
Yeah.
Just before.
So I hope you're looking forward to more of this today.
Hooray!
Standard usual disclaimers and whatnot. If you're of delicate heart, mind, or hearing, look away or don't listen.
Yeah, no. You should definitely not look at this podcast.
Don't look at. I mean, because those colours on the media player, they will just fuck
Yeah,
you
once
up.
you put your iPod in, just close your eyes because anything you're looking at, it's just gonna kill you.
We're going to give you epilepsy.
because we will drop swear words like I just did.
Wait, you dropped a swear word? I didn't hear.
yeah,
Could you
you
clarify?
No, I can't.
Really?
clarify.
Could you define?
It is.
It's on a list of 13.
On the list of 13.
What?
13 things you can't say.
I don't know this list.
This might be an American thing.
To be fair, actually, it starts as 7 if you go for the classic George Carlin.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, I'm surprised people still say crap on TV. So it was when I started.
Yeah, no. I think way back in the day, you probably couldn't have said it when we were growing up either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to say shit on TV.
Then I remember the moment when I was watching an episode of a sitcom and some little kid said "bitchin'," and I went, "What?"
Wow. Okay, now I'm still surprised at that one as well. In a kind of linked thing, we are all of the University of Kansas, but we are not endorsed by the we are not representative of the
Representative,
University,
yes.
of the University of Kansas.
Technically speaking, like in the broad strokes, paper sense, we're endorsed, and that
Yeah,
we have
and I mean,
jobs.
in the
Very, very, very broad.
and in the broad strokes that we are the usual 3-to-1 ratio of male to female that you tend to get in grad school, we're also representative.
No. I mean, grad school tends to be pretty evenly
It's
split.
It is actually.
closer to 50-50. It does
It is.
depend on what department
It's
you're
post
in.
grad school. I mean, yeah, but post grad school gets pretty bad. Talking of departments, I was scanning a book the other day, and the art department had all its stuff going up on an overhead projector. Some of those kids are terrible.
Jesus Christ, why the fuck are we starting here?
Because we mentioned. Oh, because I
Departments?
mentioned
Departments.
ratios.
You mentioned ratios.
There was what is the usual thing as well that we generally go through at the start.
We're
Who the hell are we?
Oh, you
Oh,
also fact checking.
fact-checking.
Fact
Yeah.
checking.
We don't.
Yeah.
We don't.
Yeah.
I mean, we
Period.
do, but we're not very good at remembering.
That's actually that's a very good way to put it.
And I mean, we've all read the papers this time, even if I did read
We
mine.
only fact checked
like
about
a
the
while ago.
important stuff, such as, what we're not talking about.
Or who the people are that we, oh no, wait, that's the one thing we always get wrong.
Yeah, no, that'll be fine. We'll
Or the very obscure details that no one cares about.
if we're wrong, feel free to send your hate mail to us, and we'll promptly ignore
Yeah,
it.
please someone email us because I'm getting sick of the spam.
I mean, come on.
Hey,
There's got
it's spam.
It's one of our fans out there asking whether or not you want a bigger penis, James.
It's not
Your
about
brother.
penises.
It's your brother, isn't it?
It's your brother. My brother doesn't need. No, my brother.
Wait, what?
Yeah, wait. No. I was going to say my brother doesn't need me to have a bigger penis, but
Wow. I feel like we need to delve into your family life on
I
this
don't.
one,
I don't think
James.
we do. I think we need to still talk about
Call
the
the
spam.
anal rapist.
The spam. The spam.
And Nalrapist.
And Alrapist. The spam. Fuck, this is all just going to be fucking Arrested Development jokes now.
It is mostly just because you've gone that far, but we're gonna we'll tide it.
Do you know what?
Yeah.
I knew about the Alrapist thing. I was waiting for so long. I was like, maybe it's not this show.
No, as I said, it's third season. My favorite jokes.
Yeah.
Please
there was
tell
there was
somebody
a
about
thread
this
of,
podcast.
Please tell someone about this.
Oh, yeah, well, I mean, I just tweeted about the podcast with all our little things that we're doing.
Yeah, no. That's I don't think you've gotten to that. That's Save Our Blues. That's the desperate one where they pull out all the stops to do the shitty things that get you ratings for TV.
Oh.
And at one point, like Ron Howard literally just says, "Please tell your friends about this show."
Well, I mean, yeah, if people want to like get more people. Look, if one more person likes us on Facebook, I could see what people are doing.
That's creepy. Not one more person like us on Facebook, because then you give James power that he should not
No,
have.
the most disturbing thing is that I have to share this power with Randall.
Oh my god, that's even
Okay,
worse.
yeah, that's getting.
Which is
into
why this
that.
morning I went, James, you're ruining the illusion, man.
Wait, what's ruining the illusion?
Oh, I just told
Editing?
I just told people that we're recording stuff in advance.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no.
mean, the
no,
fact-
James, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. It's all about like the glitz and the glamour, and they think that like they're listening to us in real time every single time they put on the
I'm really sorry, but
Well,
if
maybe
you're
for younger,
going to go glitz
influences.
and glamour, I don't think we're really. You're like Chicago. We're kind of more Oregon gay district.
Okay.
Like Portland. Where it's
Portland.
sort
Oh,
of
yes.
hipsters.
So you mean like
entirety of Portland.
Every single street corner has a strip club and a bar?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Wait,
or,
I
or an
thought that
abandoned
was.
factory.
Yeah.
I thought that was Berlin.
No, that's Frankfurt.
Frankfurt.
With
right,
Frankfurt, where the train station from the airport drops you off in the red light district. My hostel there was next to a
Listen,
giant
this
gay
doesn't-
porn store, and the oldest, sweetest men
It's for you, Martin.
kept going in it. It was very. I mean, Germans are weird anyway, because how would you advertise sausage in England? No, not England. Sorry, America. It'd be like some guy talking in a really deep voice about how they're the best sausages ever, right?
To be fair, we very rarely see. Oh, here, okay.
No,
the
well,
sausage
Jimmy
we have
Dean.
is Jimmy
Oh,
Dean.
Jimmy
We-
Dean.
Jimmy
we,
Dean.
we tend to take a slightly different strategy than England. We have like just sort of the old
Oh,
country
Hillshire
gentleman
Farm also.
talking about
yeah,
how
yeah.
back in the good old days we used to make sausages like Grandma used to before all these big city factories took over the sausages.
Back when we didn't have to pay for labourers because we owned them.
Yeah. I mean, it's
And
exactly
then
that.
somebody wrote a book called The Jungle.
I would say it's exactly that Futurama joke. Of,
Uh-huh.
do you remember a
Petrich
time
Farm
when?
remembers.
Yeah, Petrich Farm
Yeah.
remembers.
Well, in Germany, they will have a sausage and then they'll just have a woman deep throating it.
I think
I'm sorry, I killed Amanda.
I think I've seen similar advertisements in.
Ice cream,
I would say
candy bars.
the only other place I've seen
Soda.
similar types of advertisements were in Scandinavia and also Brazil.
You know, pretty much any place
anywhere where there were
except for the
Germans.
US.
And Canada.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Or I was just saying anywhere where the sort of English puritanical elements like the U.S. and England are absent.
You picked two very bad countries as examples.
Yeah, I did.
anyway, today we're
What are we talking about,
Amanda?
Amanda?
No. You want to get into the topic right now?
yes, because I find
Oh,
myself
because
vaguely
we have like a dino dong trace we could discuss and all
Oh,
that.
dude, we totally.
Okay,
Hey,
well,
Amanda,
We are not
Kraken.
mentioning your dino dong theory.
So as James so kindly spilled the beans, today we're going to be
We're talking about Dino Dog.
We're not talking about dino beans. We're talking about dino dongs.
good lord,
but
Kirsty.
today we're going to be talking about trace fossils.
I think we have a title.
Dino dongs.
Dino beans.
Dino beans. Oh, no, I don't. No, that's worse than dongs.
That goes with the dong.
We've killed Amanda.
Sausage traces.
Is
That's-
Sausage traces. Oh my god. Oh my god, Amanda is literally just choking on laughter and shame.
I'm so proud my parents listen to this.
Oh, I know,
You
really.
okay there? Do you need more water?
It's times like these I really feel like we're doing something
Does
positive
anybody
for the
have a
world.
knife? Because I could trach her if we need to.
Yeah, we can't. No. We should do it with a pen because I've seen that on hospital shows. Just
Drink
jab it right there.
sake, Amanda.
no, thank you.
You know what? I think you should drink.
Do you need more apricot?
No, I'm
Today
good.
we are sponsored by, I'm telling you to buy, Samuel Smith Organic Apricot Beer, because it's delicious.
Or Samuel Smith, chocolate beer.
Oh, yeah.
No, that's for.
What you gonna say?
I was going to say pussies because I just saw Arrested Development in English.
Okay, I'm going to make a very vain attempt to get us back on topic.
Oh, okay. What's that topic? Hey, wait, we never started on topic. Actually, our topic was originally
Sausages and
Germany
dino
and
dongs.
sausage.
Yeah,
Something like
German
that.
German sausage.
German sausages. So
I mean, here's
speaking
the
of
thing,
German sausages,
Germans always want you to look at their sausages.
speaking of German sausages, Amanda.
What we're going to be talking about today is Ichnology, which is ironic because one of the founding guys of Ichnology is German.
You're too fucking good at this.
I know.
Amanda,
done.
what's Ichnology and why do Germans like it?
Yeah, why do Germans like Ichnology?
So
And how much sausage did Silac really eat?
that I don't know. Ichnology is the study of trace fossils. So these are footprints, burrows, scratch marks, swimming marks, coprolites, fossilized poo, pretty much anything that is
I'm apparently a PhD, but I'm a child. I laughed at fossilized poo.
is
Really? That's what you laughed at?
Yeah. Everything else was just kind of boring, but fossilized poo.
and traces are evidence of behavior. We can look at the body fossil of an organism and we can draw conclusions from it based on functional morphology, which is using
All
modern.
right, now why are you laughing?
Because Amanda's like, this is traces of behaviour, and I'm thinking, what behaviour you can get out of poo? This dinosaur had some really bad runs.
Well, this state had diarrhea.
Fossilized behavior.
See, as I
So-
said, poo is funny.
So I forgot where I was going with this.
Okay, so they can be
Used for
behavior
behavior.
used for functional
right.
morphology.
So we can look at functional. We can look at the functional morphology of an animal, and we can tell some things about what it did.
This was
where
a
it
really
lived.
big dinosaur.
And then,
That's a really big pile of shit.
but then, if we want to
Nice job,
know,
Malcolm.
if we want actual, real evidence of an organism's behavior,
Life
we have to
finds a
look.
way, baby.
We have to look at trace fossils.
Yes.
And so I mentioned a German guy, Silacker, very briefly, who has literally been working on ichnology for over 50 years.
Yes.
A cool side note about Silacker, which we might have mentioned in an earlier podcast, was he
Most
was
likely.
U-boat captain.
U-boat
Yeah.
captain who
We totally talked about him when you meant metallic. We talked about him for like half an hour.
yes,
Yeah, but
Instead of
everything that we talked about with him was
actual truth
legit.
and not
Yeah.
what we thought was with brutality.
You
No,
ever met him?
unfortunately, no.
I have.
Yeah.
Is he as cool as he seems?
He's kind of a
he's
badass.
old enough where he's just stopped giving a fuck.
That's
Yeah,
so
but in
awesome.
a generally endearing sort of way.
Okay, well, first of all, I met him because I had to take him to your seminar. And I ended up guiding him up in a lift, and I was like, "Oh, we're going to the same place." And I was like, "Is that the door through there?" And he goes, "Oh, thanks, bye," and just left. It was like, even though we're going to the same place, and they had real trouble stopping him smoking his cigars inside in England. Because
Which was awesome.
That
my
is
favourite
awesome.
thing though was when the talk where they were saying not to criticise Silacker, but we don't think he's right. And he just went. Pfft. Then he folded up his little stall and just walked out the room right past the guy while the talk was still going on.
Yeah, since we were training the session, when we walked in, we actually saw Dolph, and so we're like, "Oh, hi!" And we showed him to breakfast, like we were just organizing him. So you basically took him the other half of the way.
Yeah, did he eat sausage?
I don't know. I wasn't actually there watching him eat. Weirdly enough, I'm not fascinated by watching Germans eat sausage.
Which is why he runs and hides when I eat.
But no, yes, okay. So you took him to breakfast, and then I took him up to your thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then my advisor cornered him afterwards and talked to him for like 3 or 4 hours.
Is it just about things?
I imagine mostly trace fossil stuff, but you never quite know. I mean, they're both smokers, so they could have just been talking about that all day.
Yeah.
Probably.
About how inconvenient it is to try and smoke in London these days.
Yeah,
Probably.
Yeah.
yeah.
So Silacker was essentially one of the guys who laid the foundation of what we think of as modern ichnology. He came up with different what are called ichnofacies, which are groups of trace fossils that you all find together, and they can be indicative of certain environmental conditions, like low oxygen, high energy. You do have to be careful about this because sometimes you think, oh, well, it's low oxygen, therefore it's deep water, but that's not actually the case.
So like examples, can you give like general broad strokes of what you might expect an ichnofacies to look like?
Right. So let's say you're dealing with the Scalithos ichnofacies.
Okay.
This is categorized as quote unquote near shore. essentially shifting sands, I think is the exact description of it. So you've got a lot of high energy, lots of wave action, you're going to be dealing with coarse sediments, and you're going to find really simple burrow structures. Really just like straight vertical tubes, which are called scalithos. Things like ophiomorpho, which are shrimp burrows that have little fecal pellets in the walls to reinforce the burrow and keep it from being destroyed. Things like that, stuff that you would look at and expect to find in a high-energy environment, that's traditionally called the scalithos ichnofaces.
The thing to bear in mind about this, because first of all, there's a tiering issue.
Yes.
If you get weathering, you might get a second or third tier one. It's going to look different, but be representative of the same environment.
Right.
The other thing as well is that they do grade into each other. So
Yes,
you will get like
that too.
scalithos burrows in other ichnofacies.
Right, you can get them in the Cruziana ichnofaces, for example.
And I just think the interesting thing with this, the way you described this, you immediately went not to the organisms or to the behaviors, but to the environment.
Right, and that is the key part of an ichnofacies. That is what is representative of an ichnofacies. Now there's different classification schemes. There's an ethologic or behavioral classification scheme, which, if I recall correctly, was first used by Echdale in 1984. And that is based off of what was the animal doing? Was it walking? Was it resting? Was it feeding, grazing, farming? There are animals that will lay down trails of mucus for bacteria or algae to grow
Hexagonal
on.
fossils. I forget their name.
Crap.
Don't try and remember it.
I won't. But it's really, really cool. And so you can categorize traces based on behavior, and that is done fairly regularly. So
because traces will grade into each other. You'll have a swimming trace will grade into a plowing
a resting-
trace.
yeah,
or something
or a
like that.
resting trace. Yeah. So being able to separate these things out by behavior is extremely useful.
Okay. But I just find it, I guess, interesting that, this gets into the duality of traces, which is one of the things that this paper that we're actually going to be discussing by Plotnik is suggesting is both traces' biggest strengths and the way they've been treated, their biggest failings.
Yes.
Is that often when people are looking at these trace fossils, they're looking at it with more of a sedimentological eye.
Yes.
They're looking at to say what can it tell about the environment, the depositional environment, and they really don't give a damn about the actual species.
Yeah, well, I mean, here's the other thing, and I don't know if you guys saw the paper that was Bertling et al. As well. One of the dangers with trace fossils is because multiple different types of organisms can produce the same trace fossil, you should never try to assign a direct producer.
Yeah.
So while you can look at the behaviors, you shouldn't do it in terms of this was made by a shrimp, or this was made especially by this species of shrimp. It's very interesting that almost every time people discuss trace fossils, they immediately go for the producer.
There are those rare exceptions where you have a crayfish that's stuck in its own burrow.
Well, they're
Or
called
Martignia. And there are also, you can make broad generalizations about trace makers. You're not going to look at my bird tracks, for example, and go, these were made by a heron or a bird that was arboreal. You're going to look at it and go, this bird looked like a shorebird.
Well,
so you can make,
even broader, you're not going to look at it and say that it was made by a mammal.
It's a
Right.
bipedal archosaur. That's as far as, at least in some areas of the not the Paleozoic, of the Mesozoic. That's as far as you can say.
again, that sort of depends on...
Grallator is almost exactly a preservational thing.
What? No, Grallator doesn't look anything like a bird track. It's dinosaurian.
What are we talking about now?
Grallator is a small theropod track.
Three-toed theropod track.
It's got a very, very low angle of divarication, so that's the spread between the toes.
Okay.
And one of the ways that you can tell Mesozoic bird tracks and from dinosaur tracks is that Mesozoic bird tracks are usually of things that are very shorebird-like or wader-like. So they're going to have a relatively high angle of divarication. Most of the stuff I measured has greater than 90.
But Grallator,
or even greater than 100.
Gradatours can be ornithopods and theropods. It can be either of those.
Oh, right. No, that I'm not arguing with.
Some people have misdescribed bird tracks as Grallator. People have done it.
Where?
Everywhere. People do it a lot.
Well, that was in the 1930s.
Not necessarily. People, look, here's the thing. People work on things that they're not experts.
Well, that's true. No, there were some bird tracks that were discovered in the Lakota Formation back in 1930-something, I think. And we found the original paper, and we were looking at it, and we were like, those are dinosaur tracks, because they were describing them as dinosaur tracks, and they were actually birds.
Okay.
But these days, there have been a very clear set of criteria that have been starting to lay down starting with Lockley and carried on by others, where it's easier in most cases to discern bird tracks from dinosaur tracks. But that's not, it is kind of the subject of this paper, this podcast. It's, how do you put it? In a very broad sense, and especially when you're going to be talking about behavior, you have to make assumptions about the trace maker. Because it's not enough to just sit there and go, well, this thing was doing this other thing. It's more powerful if you can look at, and you can make some identification about the trace maker.
But can you ever really know?
No, and you can't. Well, I would never, for instance, say that this trackway was made by, this particular species of bird, Mesozoic bird. What I look at this morphology is identical to a shorebird, but the shorebirds weren't around in the Mesozoic, or at least they weren't very common, the actual Charadiform birds. So I say they're shorebird-like, there's nothing wrong with that. So you have to make these assumptions. It's the same kind of thing with Ophiomorpha. People have looked at burrows in the modern, and this is also where the Plotnik paper, something that the Plotnik paper talks about, is doing what's called neo-ichnological.
So let's actually back up for a bit and just introduce what the Plotnik paper is
Right.
about.
Well, the one thing I do wonder is, if you read the other paper, they set a lot of groundwork for how you treat ichnofossils. And that's very important before you can even go into talking about the behavioral side of things.
Okay, do you want to start with that one instead, and then?
I don't know. It's up to you guys, but I think it's almost redundant to do the other one after you've done Plotnik.
Okay, we can start with that one.
Okay, sure.
Sure.
Sorry.
And that's simply talking about the practice of naming ichnofossils, what is or is not an ichnofossil.
Redefining it.
ICZN.
Yeah.
Whether or not they, whether or, all this stuff, because the reason I'm doing this brings to mind as well is you talked about neo-ichnology, and what do they say about modern ichnotaxa in that paper? In the Bertling et al. Paper.
Oh shit. I don't remember.
They say you don't name them.
Well, right.
Yeah.
That makes sense. You don't. It's not. How do I word this? It's because it's not really an ichnotaxa.
Why not?
Well, because it's not a fossil.
That doesn't know. I mean, we name species,
That's
and we
true.
don't name fossil species different to modern species.
I guess my best guess would be is that you can actually observe the trace maker making the behavior, making the trace, and you can directly link the two. Part of the reason that you erect ichnospecies and ichnogenera is to be able to communicate and actually describe and discuss these traces that you've got. If you can sit there with a modern animal and go, well,
That's the ice.
That's
don't
the
worry.
ice machine's fine.
if you can see these modern animals actually, like in the case of the cicada larva, the Smith and Hasiotis 2008, I think, where they did these these modern experiments with cicada larvae and actually observed them backfilling these burrows. You don't have to sit there and go, that's a Nactodemosis burrow. You can go, that's a cicada making a backfilled burrow.
At the same time, if these things were morphologically identical, it makes sense to me to have a simple labeling system. The reason people tend not to, at least the reason it's explained in the Bertling et al. Papers to why they don't name modern ichnotaxa, is because it's impossible to get a holotype. Because these things are in mud, and they're not lithified, and if you take a cast, you're not actually having the actual thing itself still. You've just got a cast. There's an interesting story that my advisor Simon told me, because he was at that meeting and second author on the paper, and he was very against naming modern ichnotaxa. He offered to provide the human holotype coprolite in order to try to kill the argument, which he obviously came out on top of, because they say very clearly you shouldn't name ichnotaxa. So I can understand
Modern
exactly.
ichnotaxa.
Yeah, I can understand exactly what you're saying. At the same time, I'm always leery when you've got a dichotomy based purely on age, which is essentially what you then have.
Well, I think there's hypnotaxonomy in and of itself is interesting in that you're using the Linnaean classification system, but you've lost the assumptions of Linnaean's classification system. So by that I mean your kingdom, phylum,
Right,
class,
there
family,
is
genus,
no
species.
actual relationship.
Yeah, you're using genus and species even though there's no relationship. They're just morphological similarities. It
And
is
again-
true.
Yeah, the
well,
paper
we
itself-
refer to it as phonetics.
The paper itself said you could get it to maybe the family level.
Yeah, there are people who make.
But I mean, families, we make
yeah.
all that up. We make
Yeah.
all this up.
And in which case, you know what? Maybe ichnotaxonomy is somewhat more honest than biological taxonomy.
In that it's truly
Is that you're
pulling shit out of your ass.
you're
essentially.
admitting all
Well,
out
part
that
of it.
your ranks don't mean anything at the start.
that's true.
Yeah.
I mean,
And-
your lowest rank probably has some degree of meaning in
Yeah.
that it is at least representative of the behavior that you
Of
have
a
right
group
now.
of animals that
Actually,
Yeah.
not necessarily. In most cases, your ichnospecies is represented by morphology and not behavior.
Okay, but I mean,
But
the
that's
morphology
that's
of the
a
trackway
fetch for a
is-
different the latter half of the podcast. I have a rant that I get on my soapbox about that.
So wait, you're assuming that genera are linked behaviors?
No,
Okay, I was saying genus is.
no.
So it's all just morphology.
Ichnotax,
Which it is.
yeah, it's all based on morphology.
And this is the one bugbear I have with all this, which is it's currently still regulated by the ICZN, which is the International Code for Zoological Nomenclature. Ideally, it needs its own system. It needs to be divorced completely from the biological naming system, almost completely. And if you want to have your genus and your species
Yeah,
ranks,
I mean,
fine,
I don't
but-
have a problem with keeping ichnotaxonomy a binomial nomenclature. That's perfectly logical, and that way we don't have to change anything, which would be a giant pain in the ass considering the number of ichnogenera and species that we've established already.
But having it controlled by the ICZ is a little weird.
Yeah, it's the problem with that is that you need somebody who would be willing to go in and actually create the same kind of system.
Yeah, you need to have a new system put into place, and
Yeah.
the ICZ already exists, so why would you not use them?
Well, I
And-
mean, the ICZ, they have the botanical and the, it's not bacterial, but you know what I mean.
Oh, you mean as far as like single-celled
There-
organisms
Yeah.
or species or
What's the-
nebulous
yeah,
concepts?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
the ICB. And
yeah.
And the IC... what's the botanical one then?
No, I think the botanical
the botanical one's in the.
No, botanical's separate because you can
Yeah.
have the same genus and species
Right.
of plants and animals, which is also confusing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Is it ICAN for the bacteria?
You mean just
No, it's BN for the bacteria.
Is it BN?
Isn't that botanical?
They refer to
I
it
thought that
in
was
the.
botanical.
No,
to,
they-
to-
Oh,
to-
they
to be
refer
fair,
to it.
Randall
I'm
does
just
probably
overlooking
work on more bacteria
That's
than
true.
any
no,
other.
Yeah, we
I
should-
know. I think you're right, and I'm trying to work out what the plant one. ICFN floral? No.
No.
Bear in mind,
Oh,
bear in mind the plant one. You think we've got it bad having to do the animal one? The plant people, the description has to be in Latin still.
Oh dear God.
Yeah.
Ah, fun.
Um,
So you can't have Sex Pistols,
well, you can do, but then you have to explain in Latin what
What
the
the
Sex
Sex
Pistols
Pistols
are.
are.
in Latin?
Yeah.
That sounds fun.
Yeah, that does actually.
So, I mean, it's kind of spitting in the Sex Pistols' face, given everything they were for.
Yeah. Doing it completely in Latin. That
Yeah.
seems
Yeah.
a little bit too gauche.
Yeah.
You'd have to write that they tried to sing "God Save the King" on the Thames.
God save the Queen.
God Save the Queen. Yeah,
We
sorry.
haven't had a king in a long time.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah,
It's
I
okay.
screwed that one up.
It's okay. You've only had a king for, the last 8 years?
Please do not take this as an endorsement of the Republican Party from James.
5 years, James. 5 years.
I mean, because really, ideally, you guys should just sort of, rejoin.
Fix a whole lot of problems.
Create a whole lot more.
So I think a separate nomenclature would be good, but
Yeah.
I mean, there are practicalities. If you need people to run it, even if they could just copy and paste most of the animal one and then delete half of it, it's. But I mean, the main distinction there is that, to me, is that when you're dealing with animal taxonomy, you're assuming that your species is a unit where it's a single thing that means something.
Yes.
Whereas in taxonomy, something that's like a bell curve, and you cut off the edges, and the thing in the middle is what you say the ichnotaxon is, and there could be 3 or 4 different species making it.
Yeah, and it's,
That's one thing to
Yeah.
remember, that multiple organisms can leave very similar types of traces.
yeah. Not only is it just a bell curve of various morphologies, but also your
Taphonomies as well.
your taphonomy as well. But when you're dealing with animals, there's also again this intrinsic assumption, not necessarily assumption, but this intrinsic quality of evolution.
Yeah.
Like there is a hierarchical organization to life because of descent with common ancestry.
Yeah, and I think this is where it's really going to get divorced now that more and more people are doing their systematics based off phylogenetic analysis, which is just never going to happen with trace fossils.
It's physically impossible. You can't do it.
Considering that they can show at the end Permian one type of trace fossil goes extinct and then it re-involves 30 million years later.
Couldn't you potentially do cluster analyses to see similarities of morphology?
Can do, and I think people do.
Yes, but the problem is that, for instance, again, using my bird tracks as an example, some of the stuff I get out of Korea, you literally cannot tell the difference between it and a modern bird with certain morphologies, like shorebirds. The shorebird-like tracks out of Korea.
So wouldn't it just be the species of modern bird tracks?
What do you mean?
Yeah,
Well,
according to the paper
according
we're
to-
discussing right now, that should be really easy for you because you have a modern analog.
Well,
Yeah.
You'd name
except-
it the same ichno species.
Yeah, you'd
if
name
you
it the
were
same
to-
ichno
If you were to
species.
name modern...
if you're supposed to name modern, exactly, but I was talking more about doing a cluster analysis.
Okay, well, I mean, but I'm just going to say they're going to plot close to each other as the same thing. So if you defined your ichnogenera, in quotes, as things that cluster together, then things that cluster together are just part of the same ichnogenera.
Oh, okay, sorry, I thought we were discussing something about, like, evolution-wise.
No. This was no evolution. Actually,
okay,
that's the
sorry.
reason why I said
I-
cluster analysis. Cluster
I-
analysis is what phoneticists, people who thought of just evolution as this sort of like morphological similarity and not phylogenetic evolution, they would do they would champion cluster analysis before phylogenetics, like cladistics.
Yeah.
To try and just determine the evolutionary relatedness. And that doesn't really work, but it would work for at least morphological similarities. So you could do it
Yeah.
to define
I think there
ichnogenera.
are other
Oh,
problems
yeah.
with that to some degree as well, though. One of the big problems hitting not ichthyosaurs, that was last week.
Hitting
Hitting
ichthyosaurs.
Well, you
pterosaur
can still
workers,
hit
the other
Bizarre.
weird lizard
Yeah, reptile.
is, why can't you hear a pterosaur going to the bathroom?
We get more poo jokes?
No, come on, why can't you hear a pterosaur going to the bathroom?
I don't know why.
P silent.
God damn it, Randall, you've been on Facebook.
No, this joke is really fucking.
Whatever. A lot of people, certain people, that I'm looking at Amanda because she knows of the people that I speak, that have described pterosaur trackways have a big problem that limulid horseshoe crabs leave almost identical trackways with their hind limbs.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So there's been a lot of talk about how do pterosaurs walk on the ground? Do they bipedal and just run around like little retards, or are they
James, we're trying
Special
to be
people.
PC.
We are.
special people? It's okay.
Special
I'm
people.
English, and let's face it, you can't tell if I'm retarded because of the accent.
Mr. F.
Or
So-
whether or not they were bipedal and walked around like a man on crutches.
No,
Quadrupedal, that's it.
Quadrupedal,
Quadriplegic, that's it.
Quadrupedal. No. That's a very different thing.
They're either retarded or quadriplegic. Anyway, but a lot of the argumentation...
You heard it here first, folks.
One of the argumentation for bipedal pterosaurs stems from constantly misidentifying limulid horseshoe crab trackways as pterosaur trackways.
and for those of you not in the know, we have very, very clear quadrupedal pterosaur trackways now from the Jurassic and Cretaceous from many different countries around the world.
Cool.
Pterosaurs were quadrupedal.
Booyah.
It's amazing they were so diverse, even being so handicapped.
So they're not like Petrie.
Dear God. So
Gold medalist in Special Olympics.
You know we're losing all our listeners.
yes, we are.
Yeah. What listeners?
So yeah, I mean, obviously.
We had a
Just-
conversation, didn't we? Where are we going with this?
So just obviously from this brief overview, we can see that ichnology, and especially ichnotaxonomy, has a lot of serious problems. And the funny part about it is that nobody really knows exactly how to address them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have some people who are like, well, we should do it this way. And then you have other people who are like, no, we should do it this way. And then you have this other group of people who are like, eh.
To be fair, that's everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because there is no set rules, a lot of people
Yes.
just do stuff.
That I think is one of the biggest problems with ichnology is that there are ichnotaxonomy, which I don't do really, for in fact actually this very reason, is that there really aren't any set rules. I have seen papers that have described a brand new ichnogenus from 2 vaguely poorly preserved trackways. Or
Don't worry,
tracks. Sorry,
don't worry.
tracks.
We-
Not even a trackway.
We
which
do
is,
that with animals too, don't worry.
Yeah.
Well, yes, but I mean,
We're getting better. I mean, that's something
That-
that paleontology. You go way far in the past, like there's really poorly defined species.
but
As
this
time's
was like
gone on, we've
in
gotten better and
2006.
consistent.
I will
you
still
know,
name something
the
from a
mid-
single specimen, though.
No, that's
Go back
not.
in the past, you would name something.
That's.
off
I'm not
a piece of
saying
specimen.
don't. Yeah, I'm not saying don't name something off a single specimen, especially if it's a well-preserved specimen. What I'm saying is that if you have, especially in the case of trace fossils, if you don't even have a full trackway, naming a new ichnogenus is probably not a good idea.
I mean, what's really bad is, given that the point of naming something is to quantify it so that other people can recognize it in the field, people will do things and not provide measurements or figures
Oh,
or
God,
anything
yes.
like that.
That's bad. I mean, actually, let's be honest. The point of naming something is more fundamental. It's the human desire to put a box around something.
That and it helps us
I don't want to put a
communicate.
box
Yes,
around things.
exactly.
You don't go, hey, that bird track over there that has semi-palmate webbing and is 3.4
Yeah.
millimeters
There's a
long.
whole
3
thing.
centimeters long.
I mean,
you know.
to quote George Carlin, we have thoughts, but thoughts are very boop, 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 boop. And then we assign a word to a thought, boop, and we stuck with that word for that thought.
And
Yep.
we've spent the last 200 years putting boxes within boxes because of this very reason.
Pretty much. That's
Yeah.
how the human mind works.
Yep, it's very zen.
Sure. Yeah, it's very
Yeah,
zen.
very zen.
That.
Zen. Yeah.
I think she's thinking feng shui.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, it's very feng shui.
yes, sorry, that's what I was thinking.
You were thinking feng shui?
I was thinking feng shui.
All right.
Sorry, my
The
bad.
desk
Why not
open to
both?
opportunity?
Yes.
Okay, because yeah, it's like a golden toilet. Because never mind, C-Lab jokes.
Oh, it's been years. So where was I going with this?
Naming.
Naming,
I
right?
don't know where any of this was
I-
going.
God,
Amanda's getting on a soapbox.
No,
Not yet.
no,
that's
not
later.
yet. That's later.
We'll get her some. We'll get her some whiskey for that.
Oh dear God. So essentially, when you work with trace fossils, there are a couple things that you could be doing with them.
Okay.
And the majority of people will focus on depositional environment or ichnotaxonomy.
And I think largely that comes from people's perspectives when they're coming into the field as to whether or not they're coming at it from an ecologist standpoint or they're coming at it from a strongly geological standpoint.
Well, here's the thing. The majority of ichnologists don't come in from biology, and that's something that Plotnick talks about
Yeah.
in his 2012 paper. The majority of people in ichnology today are geologists.
You're what's left. They are what's left of what paleontology used to be. Was a lot of paleontologists these days come at it from a very biological perspective.
Yes.
Yes.
Getting back to Silacker, even outside of his work that he did on trace fossils, I mean, you can see his interest in fossils in general as a sedimentological process.
Yes.
When you look at his paper on Lagerstätten, which are
Yes.
just these exceptional preservation issues, where sites of exceptional preservation, where he basically was more interested in that paper when he defined that term of what it means when we preserve a fossil for the depositional environment than for what the fossils actually meant. I mean, that was the thing he was most interested in for that paper.
Well, I
Right.
mean, his view of macroevolution is interestingly disjointed, but it's because he's thinking of things from more of a processes level in terms of the
Well, I mean, that's the whole golden biotopes,
Yeah.
which actually,
Yeah.
I mean, I think as out there as of a term as it sounds, I think there's a lot of interesting ideas behind some of the things that he gets at, particularly also when he gets to the notions of like functional constraints just because of physics, like
Yeah.
is that what ammonite sutures and other things like that, which
Yeah.
Yep.
he states are functional constraints.
I mean, but it's interesting. That's almost converging on a spandrels kind of thought, but from a very different angle.
Yeah, it's very much like these things have to be here because they are, but as opposed to them being like evolutionary accidents, it's more like they're passively coming from the precipitation of elements in a jar.
It's the same reason that you get people will keep looking at the golden ratio on ammonite coils and whorls and stuff like that, because they think that things will converge upon a physical best fit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing. I mean, evolution teaches us that nothing ever hits a best fit. We're good enough, and we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think the idea being that just out of pure randomness, eventually you're going to converge upon the best idea because everything else is going to be outcompeted because it's worse. Of course, to us, we don't think of it like that.
No, and
But-
I mean, yeah, even with people who are thinking of things in fitness, even if they like maybe outwardly act as though it's the best and it's going to outcompete everything, they have to know in their head that even Darwin thought it was probabilistic. Like, just because you have the highest fitness, you can be the highest fitness coyote, you're hit by a truck.
Right.
Or it doesn't help you.
Or you live
Random shit happens.
Or you live on an island and the volcano on the island explodes and wipes out your entire population because you were on
I don't know why the
island.
coyote's on a volcanic island, but coyote's probably more likely to be hit by a
you
truck.
know, the best fit
Well, I would-
coyote
Maybe it
lives
was
on
Noah's
volcanic
Island.
islands.
Oh, dear God.
Poisky.
Well, you know, he followed that damn roadrunner to the island.
That's what it was.
No, it's actually true. The highest fitness coyote is the one who just sadly subscribes to Acme as opposed to any other
I mean,
good
to be honest,
magazines.
I mean, any coyote that can use gunpowder is to be feared.
No, as I said, his only failing is that he subscribes to Acme. If he went to any other company, he
His
would have
only
caught that
failing is
goddamn
that the only
roadrunner.
thing he wants to eat is a stringy bit of meat that's got absolutely no flesh on it
It's
whatsoever.
the goddamn principle of the thing. He failed once, he needs to prove it. I think Wile E. Coyote is the ultimate example of a scientist. He knows ultimately that he will never actually reach his goal, but he keeps trying.
Really? You've never reached any of your goals?
You'll never actually know, James. Anything you're doing, you'll never actually know.
I mean, this is why when you do it, you just stop caring and do something else.
It's called scientific realism. You believe that there is an actual reality out there, but you realize that you'll never know it.
Yep. But even if you do find it, doesn't matter because some bastard will tell you you're wrong.
Pretty much.
Yep.
That's why you tell the bastard, I'm going to burn your house down with lemons.
What?
Portal 2.
Okay.
We're just, the title of this one should actually just be references.
Yes.
Basically what we've learned is that Randall should not be allowed to be a scientist.
Randall just shouldn't have access to lemons is actually what we've learned.
It's interesting that he shouldn't have lemons, but he can have lasers.
You know, it's far less dangerous for Randall to have lasers. He's going to burn your house down
I'm
if he has lemons.
I'm more worried about Amanda's lasers because they're portable.
We don't talk about that.
Okay.
We don't talk about Amanda's lasers.
What? Anyway.
So, were we talking about something?
I don't know. Where
I remember coyotes. Coyotes are fun.
Oh, we were talking about the golden
cute.
ratio.
Yeah.
We have coyotes out back.
They sound cool.
Yeah, they sound awesome.
No, we were talking about we got off on a tangent. Oh, about we were talking about how so many ichnologists approach the field from a geologic perspective and not a biological perspective,
Yeah.
which can be kind of a problem if you're dealing with literal animal behavior.
Yes, definitely.
So,
Wait, do you mean literal or literal?
I think she meant literal, as in like these animals are just being very literal. They're
animal
speaking
just
metaphorically,
took a
but
Well,
they're being
I'm
very
wondering
literal.
if it's
Right
the
here.
behavior of animals in leaf litter or the behavior of animals.
the littoral zone is in lakes.
No,
Yes.
it's leaf litter as well.
Anyway.
I don't want to comment. I don't know which one of you is right.
We're both right, but I'm thinking of it from a very biological point of view, from people that like jungles.
Okay.
That might be it. I don't
Also,
work in...
Most of my country used to be woodland.
Sure.
Yeah, you kind of
You live
screw-
next to a fucking giant lake. That's why you know it in that
Oh,
regard.
yeah.
That's why I know it in this regard.
It's really an inland sea, but yeah.
It's
It's
a
not. That's
lake.
bullshit. It's not salty.
the Caspian isn't salty.
It's not a sea.
The Caspian is salty,
It is
isn't
salty?
it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Big, if it was just big enough.
because it's a remnant of the Tethys.
I thought it was fresh water.
No,
No.
Baikal is
No,
fresh.
Baikal, that's what I was thinking of.
And that's a rift lake anyway, so fuck Baikal.
What? What?
It's a rift lake, although I guess technically Superior
Look at
is
you,
also
just
a
sitting on
rift
top
lake.
of your mountain, passing judgment on other lakes.
Baikal, I take it back. Baikal's awesome because it has its own species of seal, which is pretty awesome.
So the London Underground has its own species of mosquito.
Here's the thing, James.
Oh,
Mosquito
God.
versus seal.
Which one is cuter?
Mosquitoes don't bite off whole hands.
Right. So
It's okay. It's just a loose seal.
So
Leopard seals are amazing. Do you know how terrifying they are? Have you seen their teeth?
What if they have a taste for mammal blood, James?
They eat penguins. They're like leopard seals. It's very difficult to differentiate the dentition.
Dentitions.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'll mix the two words together with that of a tiger.
well, you have to remember seals are carnivores.
Yeah.
They're closely related to dogs, I think.
Yeah, felines aren't related to dogs.
I would say, aren't seals just dogs that went to the water?
Essentially.
I mean, seals are amazing. They're dogs without legs. You don't need to walk them. They're friendly. Everyone should have a seal.
Well, they're friendly unless it's mating season.
Then they get grumpy.
And then you just beat it and make sure you're dominant.
So you're suggesting you fuck your seal up the ass to prove you're dominant?
No, and I'm not suggesting you should beat a pet either.
Okay, good.
He's not suggesting we should open a club.
Paleo After Dark does not suggest that you club your seals routinely.
So
Bob Barker says you should spay
And
and neuter your
your
pets.
Especially if they're seals.
Sorry, James, you didn't get that one because you didn't watch The Price is Right a billion times as a kid because you had
No.
nothing better to do when you were sick.
I had a
did.
childhood.
High five.
It's called daytime TV, and when you're sick as a dog, you watch things at 10 o'clock in the morning, and it depresses the shit out of you.
I watch
liked The Price
DVDs.
is
Do you know
Right.
why? Because in England we have something called... I've blanked the guy's name out. But basically, it's when I was unemployed, I used to sit at home and I'd watch a lot of DVDs. Like I watched the entire Sharp series because it's amazing, multiple times. Then Hornblower because it's pretty much the Sharp series but on the sea. My friend would be watching the Jeremy Kyle show, and literally that is taking trash off like from houses, like
Yeah.
like the scum of the country.
We had
and
Jerry Springer.
putting him
It was
on
roughly the same
TV.
thing.
Same thing.
But it'd be a bunch of people that are unemployed and whatnot. And my friend used to love watching it. I'm like, why? Because you just realised that he would think you were trash because you weren't working and you were watching his show. The only people that watch his show are the kind of people that would be on his show.
Yep. Sounds like
Yeah.
Jerry Springer.
That was Jerry Springer.
Except he didn't. I mean, this
Or any
guy.
of
This
the,
guy
you know,
never got an
gossip
opera.
press.
Jerry
Maury
Springer.
Povich.
Jerry Springer is actually very, very intelligent.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be fair, I think...
So was Hitler.
Yeah, I was going to say, to be fair, most of the people who are coming up with these ideas, probably pretty intelligent.
I mean, Randall and I had that kids show.
Yeah,
Idea.
right.
Idea for a kids show.
let's
Not an actual
not-
kids
I was
show.
gonna say,
Let's
it-
not go there.
Are we doing a Family Guy thing now? You're just going to suddenly... Do you remember that time that
Well, yeah,
Randall
but
and I had that kids show and it just zip pan?
you got the old
Shove it
recording
in the car.
right. You
Shove
can
it
just
in the
cut
car.
that bit back in.
Just cut that pic back.
Just go do 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 do.
Okay, so
and then do
you
it.
want me to do the do sounds? Okay.
Yeah.
Woo, 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 woo. Hey, Randall, remember that time we had that kid show? Oh, I don't know, Peter. Wait, no, I'm sorry, I screwed it up.
Which
I
one?
actually referenced the reference. Oh, fuck.
Never Google Google.
Boom.
What is it when a picture's inside a picture?
Shit.
Inside a picture?
It it begins with an
Oh,
R.
okay.
Anyway,
All I can think of is Cascade. and
if
that's
you
not-
if you type that word into Google, it said, "Did you mean that word?"
Yeah.
Oh my god, that's funny. That's hilarious.
Also, if you type tilt into Google, it tilts Google's 30 degrees.
And if you're using Chrome and you type in do a barrel roll, it does a barrel
It does
roll.
a barrel roll.
Well, I mean,
Oh, it also plays Brick Break.
There used
Yeah.
to be a couple of good ones. I don't know if this one's still in there, but if you typed in French military victories, it'd go, did you mean French military defeats?
Yes.
The other one that I liked, which I don't know how long that stayed around, was when if you typed in American diplomacy, it said, do you mean American warfare?
Nice.
Nice. We got way off topic.
Was there a
Trace
topic?
fossils.
Maybe we should take a break and come back.
Okay, that sounds like a good idea.
Yeah,
Do
we're
do
gonna
do.
Remember that time we took a break? You're a bastard, man.
Does anybody get what I was thinking?
Yeah, everyone got what you were thinking, James.
Nope. I'm completely
I just-
ignorant.
I think I
Just be happy. Ignorance is bliss in this case.
generally, I mean, if I could have a lobotomy, I think I would.
Well, there's our clip right there.
It's going to be Amanda's new ringtone.
No,
As your ringtone, if I could have a lobotomy,
Yeah,
I
I
would.
I really like that's illegal.
That's illegal. That's illegal. Does it repeat, or is
No,
it
it just does it once.
Mail, motherfucker.
I've got Randall on my phone going, kill, fuck!
Nice.
I should change Amanda's ringtone to just be her going, no, because that's pretty much all I ever hear.
Yeah, but there should be a pause that just goes, no.
Yeah, you have
Actually,
No.
no, to be honest,
No.
she very rarely says no. Maybe.
Yes, maybe.
Maybe.
But it's Amanda, so maybe is no.
If you want to interpret it that way.
That's usually the case.
I mean, the interpretation is based on the person who hears it.
Maybe too.
Wait, are we going quantum with
57
interpretations
maybes
here?
and a no is still 57 yeses, according to James.
Wait, 57 maybes is an yes.
And a no.
That's
Anyway.
going off of your 57 no's and a yes.
I'm tired.
yeah.
Wake up.
So,
The sleeper must
Oh,
awaken.
are we recording?
Plotnik,
The sleeper
Right.
must awaken.
Shut
the
up,
sleeper
Tim.
must awake.
Welcome back, guys!
Smooth, James. Real smooth. Well done.
So you have
That's
any
good.
spice?
I only have some melange. I don't have any...
God damn it, we're doing Dune references
We are
now.
totally do. That's what the sleeper must
Fuck.
awaken is.
No, I know, but we're continuing with the Dune references.
We totally are.
It's like a reference inside your mind.
I wonder what kind of trace a sandworm makes.
Burrows.
Yeah, same words
Yeah.
mean
Sand?
Definitely burrows.
In sand?
You can get traces. You can get burrows in sand. It
Did
just
you have a look
has
at that
to be-
CD I gave you?
Shut up.
Do you know what's on it? Do you know what? I might have to burn you another one. Do you just take me?
What?
Do you just take me? Do you refuse to look at anything I give you? There's like an
No.
entire CD full of turkey traces.
I know. I
There's
don't.
passerines and sand.
I don't remember where it is.
No, of course you don't.
I think I know.
Do you know
where
what?
it is.
Do you know what entitled
it's
that
in the
CD?
garbage
Did
now.
you either put it in your computer?
No.
It's entitled "For Her Highness," because that's how you act.
Did you see
I'm
that
gonna
CD
go
I
get
sent
in my
you?
car
Did
and
you like
leave
the
now.
the card I gave you with your picture on it?
So did you get that thing I sent you?
You pulled an Arrested Development reference into a Harvey Birdman Attorney at Law reference.
I haven't seen that. You the guy that sent me that envelope filled with powder?
That thing he sent ya.
Did you get that thing I sent you?
The two people in the world who watch Adult Swim are laughing hysterically, I'm sure.
It's a pity
Well,
that
who
none of them
used to
listen to our
watch it.
podcast.
Yeah, pretty much. It's a pity none of them listen to us.
It's a pity that real researchers are now listening to our podcast.
Hooray.
Yay.
I would like to take this opportunity to distance myself from any and all activity that actually goes on.
She wanted to
during
take
this.
that opportunity to instance herself.
To in-distance...
No, she said the opportunity to instance herself.
I said
the opportunity to
distance.
instance
So
yourself?
you opportunity did it.
What?
No. She said the opportunity to distance,
No, she
but
said
I like your
opportunity to
opportunity to instance.
Well, remember,
No, she's
on
opportunity
paper, Amanda
instanced
is the
it.
CEO
I
of the
did
company.
Do you know what
not.
that's called? It's called a spoonerism.
Spoonerism?
No, it's a spoonerism. There was a William Spooner or something, and it was a verbal tick he had, but he was also a psychologist. I might be making half of this up. And it's called a spoonerism because he used to do that a lot.
I might be slightly tipsy, so I'm just going to believe you.
I might be hungry, so.
Oh dear God.
No, I
So
can't eat
Amanda,
that.
Plotnik.
Right. So a fundamental basis of this Plotnik paper that we sort of started discussing before the break.
We have papers that we're talking about.
Yes. Was talking more about the integration of studying behavior into Ichnology,
Yes.
Yes.
which is, in my opinion, one of the most important things you can do with Ichnology because...
To my opinion, it's the reason technology is important.
Right.
It's the only direct evidence of behavior. It's how you know that you're
from a
functional.
geological perspective, the paleo-environmental stuff you can get out of that can also bleed into...
Yes.
The environmental stuff is very important, but there is... I'm always worried of a degree of circularity of that kind of stuff.
I agree.
It's this environment because we find this here. How do you know that this is this because you find this in this environment?
It's this environment because it preserved here.
And also, there are limits to its use. Especially like in the marine realm, it's great. When you get into continental stuff, it's mostly that nobody's even bothered to look or even try. And so it's useful in certain situations, but when you get into others, it's just like, What?
Yeah.
So I don't know how much of this is jumping the gun, but one of the things I really liked about Plotnick's paper was how he wrote specifically about the various ways that we interpret animal behavior and how that has evolved through time.
Yes.
And going back to Silaker's original work, where essentially you have to treat animals as though they're robots. You just have a little robot that gets stimulus and response, and it moves in predictive patterns because it is responding just as a robot.
Domo arigato.
Mr. Roboto Domo.
Domo.
Which, I mean, as a first step and a first approximation for animal behavior makes sense, but it just doesn't really fit when you have to add the fact that each individual can learn, and it seems that learning is something that is ubiquitous among all animals. That we are not just machines, we are machines that are capable of learning from our mistakes, even if we never really, as human beings show that.
The second question.
The second question?
You only did break it down to 4.
Right, you have all 4 questions. Well, Randall, that's really not helpful for the viewers or listeners who haven't really read the book.
Well, those of us that know most about the paper from talking to Roy and might not have read it through in full.
I read it in full, but Randall, why don't you outline the basic questions that Roy was talking about?
Well, he broke it down.
We're on a first
4
name
basic.
basis now.
I know.
Yeah, we're not plotting anymore. It's Roy.
The reason I sent this paper to you is because he was finishing it off when I was visiting him.
And he seems like a cool dude.
He's a really great guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I meant to be collaborating with him. I really need to get onto that.
You should do that.
Yeah.
Well, the first influence is neurological and chemical for behavior.
So these are the problems or these are the influences of behavior?
Yes.
Okay. He's breaking 4 influences of behavior.
Then it was the ontogenic / memory.
Okay. The fact that you can learn that this pan is hot.
Okay, cool story. Just to break this up quickly. Example of this in the modern world. When I was doing my undergrad in Birmingham, we had a lot of magpies in my garden, and magpies, you don't tend to see them out in the Midwest, I guess, because you've got a lot of
You never
blue
see them
jays
in the
and stuff.
Midwest.
They're corvids that are just really, really cool, bright.
Big ones.
They're everywhere in England. And whenever they bred, you had the adults and the juveniles would be following them around. The adults, of course, had learnt that when they find bits like chicken wings on the floor, they put their foot on it and rip up with their beak. The juvenile would be throwing this thing around, going, "Why can't I get this meat off it?" Because it hadn't yet learnt to pin the food before ripping with its beak. So that's exactly the kind of thing he's talking about.
So chemical responses, learned responses. Next.
Survival and reproduction.
Okay.
Makes sense.
The fourth, phylogenetic context.
So these are the idea that potentially there could be these phylogenetically constrained behaviors.
That's an interesting concept, and this is something I wondered about Amanda's research, because I know you pay a lot of attention to the potential for convergence in morphological form.
And behavioral.
Okay, so I mean, because to my mind, behavior is going to be even more so.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
There are only so many ways that you can actually stick your beak in the sediment and pull something out of it. So probing, pecking. And if your morphology becomes so constrained, then you're going to be constrained to what behaviors that will actually allow you to get food. So something, for instance, like a spoonbill. They have a very particular style of feeding. Yeah, it's scything. And there are other shorebirds like avocets that have a different bill morphology that also employ this kind of behavior. But if you have this particular bill shape, you're not really going to be suited for much else other than scything. You can't probe. You're not raptorial. You're essentially constrained to this particular type of behavior. And we see this in multiple instances in birds that have evolved particular bill shapes. We see it in hummingbirds, in honey creepers, birds that have evolved again and again these very long bills for drinking nectar.
But this is where I think, to my mind, I mean, the environmental thing is very important to me because I rely on that a lot when working out where the things I'm working on lived. But the use of trace fossils as a way of corroborating your functional morphology statements that's very key now. But this is where I get very, very torn between the fact that you should never assign a trace to a direct animal. You've got to be very hand-wavy and say, if this is this kind of animal, this could be doing this.
You could potentially use it as strong corroborating evidence, but the fact that you rarely, if ever, see the animal like dead with its trace
Right.
means it's very
The
difficult
little
to do
trilobite
that.
had a heart attack.
Yeah,
in the middle
there's
of taking a
there's
walk.
that classic example of the little trilobite that ended its life at the end of its trace.
Yeah.
But
And like we know, Thalassinoides was made by shrimps because you get shrimps inside it.
yes,
Um,
and as previously stated, your little like burrowing organisms accidentally stuck in their own burrow.
yeah.
Right. And something else that we haven't mentioned before, but I'll mention here, because James brought up some of the stuff that I work on. We see foot and bill morphology traces in the trace fossil record that we have absolutely no record for in the body fossil record.
Mm-hmm.
But they are there.
So you know that something similar to this had to have been around, but
Yes.
you don't know what it would have been.
And
Yes.
this is cool, and this is to be expected because it's a numbers game. One animal can make many, many, many traces, but only one body fossil. And if you assume that only 0.01% of each is preserved, you're going to get the more traces
And
of
even
the animal
if the
preserved.
probability of preserving an animal is higher than the probability of preserving a trace, the fact that animals are constantly making traces throughout their lifetime.
There are
There's
also
also-
there are also some environments that are just more conducive to
Exactly.
preserving
Oh, yeah.
traces
Yeah.
than body fossils.
If you go and eat on a lake shore, you're going to get preserved. Your trace is preserved. If you happen to die there, you're going to be preserved. But if you live in a tree all the time, you're less likely to be preserved for the majority of your day-to-day life.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The other interesting thing is, even if you get similar behaviors, the traces are going to be slightly different if your morphology is slightly different, and this is when maybe your behavioral convergence can be pinpointed in the trace fossil record.
yes.
Well, so you mean actually like trying to match the body fossils that you have available to the traces to try and pin down trace makers?
To some
Yes.
degree, but if you see an avocet scythe compared to a spoonbill scythe,
They're
you'll be able to
different.
tell that it's a scythe, but you'll get a different trace. You
Right.
can say that, that these two different types of animal were doing the same behavior.
Okay.
Yes. And I was going somewhere else with that, but now I forgot what it was. There have been a few studies that have attempted to sort of start linking trace maker to the trace that they've left. Most of these are neo-ichnological studies. I'm working on some stuff as part of my dissertation to try and sort of extrapolate some of that stuff using birds.
Chicken.
No, different stuff. That's different.
I mean, if you
Geese.
want to look at this in terms of the ichnofossils that I'm most aware of, you have your Paleohelcura, which is an octopodus terrestrial, probably, trait, because it's an out-of-phase gait. And you can tell things like how the legs move based on the trace fossils. And if you're in phase, you're most likely to be under water because you've got buoyancy and you can take both sides of leg off the ground at once. If it's an out of phase, then you generally do odd steps so that you've got your constant tripod of support for when you're walking.
Oh, is this an arachnid?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And they put that to arachnids, but some of your Eurypterids were probably octopodus. And then you've got your hectopodus gait, and you've got
but
Palmicnium.
if it's terrestrial, it probably
maybe.
may be terrestrial.
No, if it's terrestrial, it may be, because Eurypterids probably were, at least some of them, were amphibious.
Yeah, there's the
Oh.
potential
Yeah.
that Eurypterids came up onto land.
Now,
I mean,
I'd expect a severe body drag, which you don't get.
Which you don't
Yeah.
get,
But
yeah.
except for this one case of there's a Scottish Hippotopterid, which you can see the in-phase gait, and it's just dragging itself along because it's probably partially submerged, but it doesn't have the buoyancy it would usually have.
I was gonna say, isn't it suggested that maybe like these things may not have been just pulling themselves out just for the hell of it, but it was mostly likely extreme cases where they needed to get from one place to another?
Possibly. My own personal thoughts on this. I mean, there are certain Eurypterids that might have done it, and a lot that probably didn't. My thoughts on this is the Carboniferous ones lived in ephemeral pools.
And then
that
they would need to move
between
from
a pool to
pool
pool.
to pool. Yeah,
And
it's
then
the same
they-
thing with lungfish.
Lungfish,
Yeah.
Same
mud
thing.
skippers.
And I wonder as well if some of them at least had creches, and they'd go and spawn in a pool and then leave it.
Define creches just for the audience.
Okay, basically it's like a nursery. You'll have a place where they breed, and it's a more sheltered environment generally for the young to grow up in, and then they sort of move in to the adult realm. You tend to see this a lot where you get a lot of juvenile sharks in very shallow water, and then they go into the deeper realm as they grow older.
Hey, little kid Eurypterid, when you grow up, you're going to need to know the ABCs.
Because I'm going to kill you.
Because Randall's going to kill you.
And there is some, because I kind of want to use to talk about some really cool examples.
I
of
just realized.
arthropod
Sorry, I
trace
just realized we went back to you and Randall's kids show. Learn the ABCs, or Randall will kill you.
I mean, considering that was to teach kids swear words, I dread to think what the ABCs actually are. I mean,
Asshole, bitch. Damn it.
well, I was going to go
Can't go with
bastard.
E. I don't know what E swear word I can come up with. Yeah, I'm
matter.
stumped just like you. I know. Anyway, so Eurypterids climbing in, out of the.
And
Full pools.
stop me when I start going on for a long period of time. But
Okay, I will.
There are two really cool case studies I like. I'll talk about the more localized one first. But the concept of
So the less cool one.
don't want to say that because I know the guy. We know the concept of Mortignia, which Dolph Silacker himself came up with in the book, which I've got, but Alicia still needs to give me back.
Alicia, give him back his goddamn book.
And that's
Did she even listen to this?
no.
Okay.
And that's and there's a lot of that's because I got everyone to. There's a lot of horseshoe crab traces, particularly in the Solnhofen, which is probably an anoxic lagoon, and things are falling in and then getting fucked, dying.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You-
That's
sorry.
a very different scenario.
Yeah, by the way, Curtis, I can hear you chewing. I'm pretty sure the microphone can.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's cool. Makes us seem like people.
It does, doesn't it?
Continue with the.
So it's just about breaking illusions today.
No, it's about references. We referenced ourselves last time with your little kids show.
How about geese?
Geese. People have dogs.
People have dogs.
Yeah. Full circle.
Full circle.
Jazz.
Hey, wait. Science is a process.
Science is-
Now it's full fucking circle, bitches.
and
You're talking about the Mortignia with
Yeah.
the horseshoe crabs.
and there's a really, really long one that goes on for a long period of time. But the really cool thing is, the longer on the track goes, the more it randomly starts changing direction. And this kind of turn and burst thing is the same kind of pattern you see when an arthropod has been sprayed with insecticide. It's the neurons breaking down. And it's really cool that as this thing was getting poisoned, its trackway is behaving in a way that you see in modern insects when things are getting poisoned. And I think that's really
So
cool.
it's about like
Yeah.
watching a drunk try to walk home.
Well, no, drunks tend to veer.
Drunks
but-
follow
in
a
a more-
random walk
in a more
distribution.
sinuous-
Random walk, but
sinusoidal.
they always have somewhere where they're trying to fucking get.
True.
And this, I mean, when these ones don't,
They're just fleeing.
Well, they're
essentially.
trying to
Well,
run
it's trying to
away,
get away.
but you can't run away from something that's degrading the inside of your brain.
Yeah.
yeah.
That's a horrifying thought.
It's called growing old, Curtis. We all have to deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I may have Alzheimer's,
you
but at least I
mortals.
don't have Alzheimer's.
that's the best joke on the internet.
Now internet references, we're just fucked.
Yeah. Grumpy
So,
cat.
yes. So a big part of
What's
it.
the second one? Sorry, or did we not?
I can talk about the second one.
Yeah, the second one.
Yeah,
I
no,
told-
I didn't mean to cut you off, man.
I told Amanda about this. She thought it was really cool. So, in modern days in Delaware Bay, when horseshoe crabs spawn, red knots just flock there and eat all the fish. Not the fish, all the
Eggs.
All the eggs. There is a massive trackway in Germany of horseshoe crabs going onto land to spawn, and then there's Archosaur trackways where they come along, flip them over, and eat them.
Nice.
And
Cool.
you've
Yeah.
just got this big track bed of just horseshoe crabs trying on land, trying to mate and lay eggs, and this Archosaur just come along and eating them. It's really cool.
Hey, baby, what the hell are you?
And I think that those are both two examples of really interesting ways that the trackways can give you insights to behavior that body fossils never would have given.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And so this is a reason why I think that behavior should be utilized more often in trace fossils, and it's not. There really aren't that many people who work on fossil behavior through traces, especially when it comes to doing modern experiments. There's literally only a handful of papers in my field in bird tracks where people have actually done anything with modern bird tracks at all.
Controlling that experiment is pretty hard.
It is.
More so than a lot.
Yeah, I
Give-
mean,
to give
if,
them the
it
benefit
is.
of the
if
doubt.
you're looking at burrowing insects, you can at least put them in like a tank
in
or
a
something.
tank,
like
yeah.
that.
I've been working on that problem as part of my dissertation. And this is why everybody keeps making chicken jokes.
Chicken.
But,
Has no one in this family seen a chicken? See, once again, Arrested Development. We're good. We're good.
so, it is
We're getting
possible.
Where my
sued.
mind went to.
It is possible. It's definitely more difficult when you're dealing with vertebrates, especially
Did you
large.
Marty McFly? Chicken?
No.
Nobody calls me chicken.
Nobody. Yeah, we haven't made a
I
Marty
think the problem is
McFly.
I led with the word cock. And I think that's where Randall's going with that.
So Randall,
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
That was a James May thing.
James May thing?
Really, you don't say that word in America that much?
No, we say that word comes up a lot.
Yes.
No pun intended.
But James May has turned it into an art form.
James May, I do
Top
not
Gear.
know this person.
Top Gear.
Top Gear?
Yeah.
I sadly don't watch.
That's
Top
why
Gear.
one day we're going to record us road tripping across America for the internet.
Okay.
That would be interesting.
I'm scared, James.
you
We
should.
have- we have
you
to-
should be.
We have to buy second-hand cars. By the way, you're going to Alabama, and I'm decorating your car.
You're decorating my car.
And nobody can have air conditioning that works.
To be fair, most
Well, no,
secondhand
that's
cars don't have air
no.
conditioning that works.
That's why you drill holes in the windshield.
So you were talking about chickens,
Right,
And your research programmy.
Right.
And easier
so
to do on, harder to do with vertebrates.
It's harder to do with vertebrates, especially vertebrates that you can't nicely keep in an aquarium, like smaller tetrapods, things like that. But it is definitely possible. Now, one of the other problems that we deal with in ichnology, to sort of step away from the paper for a minute, not that we haven't been doing that all evening.
What paper?
We're just sitting here bullshitting.
Yeah, that's pretty
Well,
accurate.
actually, some of us are talking about things we vaguely understand.
Fuck off, James.
The type of sediment that you're dealing with, whether it's mud versus sand, and also how much water you're dealing with, can have a serious impact.
Sediment influx.
Definitely. This is sort of the taphonomic
It's a
element.
taphonomic element.
Well, then, do you have an under-track or an over-track as well when you're
Yeah.
when you're
Right.
getting things preserved?
Right.
Are you
How
looking
much
at the?
has
Are you looking
diagenesis
at?
affected it?
Are you looking at the sediment layer underneath the actual track where it's been indented, or are you looking at a draped sediment over the track that has then preserved it? I mean,
that's what we're referring to with under
Yeah.
track and over track.
And, people have said, well, you can look at a track and tell that it's an undertrack or overtrack with these characteristics. But depending on how much moisture you've got, or what kind of sediment you're dealing with, you may not get pad impressions. You may not get claw marks. You might not get all of these characters of really well preserved tracks that would tell you if you're dealing with an undertrack or overtrack. It may or just a regular track.
this is why there's a strong water bias towards trackways.
There is.
Yeah, you tend to be what
Lacustrine or marine.
Lacustrine.
Sure.
There are several trackways that are preserved in rivers. The Lakota Formation tracks are all preserved in rivers. The Haman Formation, the stuff in
Aren't there a scant few in dunes? I thought.
Yes,
some
there are
were-
some.
Some in the Navajo sandstone. Which is all
Navajo
dune stuff.
sandstone. I don't know if the stuff from South Africa is dunal or not, Aeolian. I would have to double check that.
You get some very rare alien trackways in southwest
That
England.
was
Yeah.
the origin for our blowing your wadi joke.
Huh?
Never mind.
Anyway, so plenty there.
Bad sedimentology jokes.
Very
what
bad.
A wadi is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That took me a minute.
There we go.
So, there is a strong preservational bias. If you have tracks that are or any trace, really, but especially footprints, this has been done on footprints. If you have a footprint that is subaerially exposed, depending on the environment, you're generally looking at less than a week before it's completely obliterated.
Okay.
Martin Lockley did a paper on that back in the early 90s in Africa, and I can't remember exactly what he said for the bird tracks. I think it was 4 to 7 days or something before they're gone.
Then again, there was talking of Africa. There's been similar papers on vertebrate decay, and that basically, unless you get it preserved within a week or two, scavengers
It's
are going to
just
just
gone.
disarticulate the entire
Yeah.
thing, so you're never going to get it preserved.
This
Yeah.
goes for vertebrate. This goes for invertebrate. Most things, when it's left up above, it's just gone in a flash.
Yeah.
Because things are going to eat it. I mean, let's be honest. While resources are maybe not as scarce as often is predicted with that like ridiculous over-the-top view that competition is lockstep controlling everything in the world, resources are still something that is.
People eat other people's roadkill in Florida.
Yeah, I'm just saying
Oh,
resources.
that
are
happens
still,
in more than just Florida.
Roadkill Cafe.
Food is food, and food will be used.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It might not be like the most critical element to the ecosystem, but if it's food, it will be used.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, at the base level, there are bacteria that exist solely to break down things like that.
Yep.
Well, they exist because they can exist.
Yeah.
They don't exist for a
That's
purpose.
what they do. No, okay, well.
And with
We've applied a purpose for their existence.
James, when hiding bodies, has applied a purpose for certain bacteria.
So when you're dealing with trace fossils, you're also dealing with something that is in unconsolidated sediment. So if you get any kind of disturbance, even if something comes along and overprints the track, you lose it.
Okay.
So the likelihood, the fact, and you know, it always kind of shocks me that we get bird tracks preserved at all. They're small, they're delicate, they're never impressed very deeply into the sediment. It's frankly shocking that we get them preserved.
Yeah, I mean, birds are lightweight. I mean, for a reason. They have to fly.
Yes.
Their bones are hollow. They're not really like going to be. They're not of a specific body type that you would expect to be making a massive imprint on the soil.
But I mean,
Right.
that's why there's a definite shorebird bias, and it's really interesting that.
Oh, because the only places where the taphonomy is going to help you.
But it's kind of interesting
Yes.
as well that a lot of the early birds you get preserved aren't shorebirds because they've had an accident, and that's
Yes.
why they've been preserved.
They've blown into this water environment.
And then a lot of the trackways are from completely different animals that we wouldn't know existed otherwise.
Right.
So that's the thought for Archaeopteryx, right? It just accidentally
Yeah,
was
it-
flying over and
Storm.
Like,
Yeah.
well, flying. It glid.
freak heart attack, dies over a German
You know,
It's like
it
a
wasn't going to make
lagoon.
it, so
Yeah.
they had to make an emergency landing.
references.
So, yeah, if you look at the track record, almost every single Mesozoic bird track that we've got is from an ornithoran, so a modern type bird that's a shorebird. There is one trackway out of China that is a zygodactyl trackway. So most tracks are 3 toes forward, 1 toe back. That's anisodactyl. Zygodactyl is 2 toes forward, 2 toes back. You see that in parrots. Parrots have zygodactyl feet.
Anything that basically climbs a vertical surface.
Woodpeckers, but roadrunners also have it. Cuckoos have it. Zygodactyly was actually
Yeah, they do.
originally a adaptation to perching, not climbing.
Well, I mean, passerines have lowered the hind toe specifically for
Yes.
perching.
I mean, I would back up just to say that it is advantageous. It is seen in a lot of perchers, but the notion that it evolves
Roadrunners do
specifically
almost
for
no perching
I'm
whatsoever.
saying the idea that it evolves specifically for perching isn't necessarily
Yeah.
something that can be stated, but it does seem to be modernly used for perching.
I mean, a chicken's going to go up in a tree and perch at night.
Chickens also have anisodactyl feet. Was there a point to that?
I believe that was like the palm
Well,
to
okay,
your face.
here's the thing.
Randall.
Here's the thing.
We were fundamentally
you can
getting
see,
more.
You can see herons and waders perching in trees. It's
And they
fucking
look-
hilarious because
yes.
they're miserable, but
They're
they
so
still do
bad
it.
at
I still
it.
do it.
Um,
Well, I guess what I'm saying is I'm trying to get at one of the papers we were going to discuss, but we never actually did. Spandrels of San Marcos. That things can that give assigning a reason why everything evolves is something that we only do from perspective. Things can evolve and find a purpose as well.
Yeah.
yes, but when you look at where zygodactyly arose in the first lineages, it's not in trunk climbing.
But it's occurred multiple times.
Yes, it has. I'm not arguing that.
Yeah, so I wouldn't necessarily think it's considering that the lineages that preserve it today almost always are either vertical climbers or, in the case of things like parrots, just things that need really good grip because they spend half the time upside down or trying to grab random things randomly.
No, no. The majority of zygodactyl birds are perchers. Cuckoos, toucans, parrots. The only trunk climbers are the woodpeckers, and the majority of trunk climbing birds are passeriforms. Wood creepers, nuthatches, tree creepers.
Well, yeah, but the passeriform means perching bird,
Yes.
and they're not zygodactyl.
No. You're missing the point.
I'm not. I think we're talking about different points.
Probably.
I think you're taking
Most
it from
likely.
you're taking it from a functional drives evolution point of view, and I'm taking it from an evolution happens and then function occurs point of view.
Probably.
Yeah, which is again what I was getting at with
Spandrels. Yeah.
Spandrels of San Marcos.
Right.
That sometimes
I mean,
function
Evolution is
doesn't have to
completely
follow
directionless.
form.
Yeah,
That's right.
Were the
Function can
spandrel-
follow
yeah.
form. Form doesn't have to follow function.
Were the spandrels there to be painted?
exactly.
Anyway,
Spectres of San Marcos is something that you should look into. It's a very good, cool paper in 1970.
Basically, as Randall was alluding to, it stems to the fact that if you look at cathedrals, because they have domed roofs, you'll get these areas that are these expansive flat surfaces that when they were built, people decided to paint on. You could take it from the point of view that they existed to be painted on, or you could take it from the point of view that they were a structural necessity and then people decided to paint on them. And that's the difference between assigning a function and saying it occurred for the function, or it having to be there and then a function being applied to it later.
Yeah, I mean, this is fundamental to looking at evolution and saying, if you look at evolution as simply function exists and then form evolves to fill function, then that would mean that those places, those domes existed, those areas of the dome existed solely to be painted on, because that function was to be painted on and the form evolved, so forth. But forms can also evolve, like we talked about feathers way back in the last podcast, and 2 podcasts ago. Feathers can evolve previously for a different function and then be used for a separate function later on.
Yeah.
Potentially. Anyway, that is a major digression. What were you talking about?
I don't remember.
Okay, that's good.
Oh, there's one zygodactyl track from the early Cretaceous of China, and I'm not sure what actually made that. It could be an enantiornithine, which if you remember, we talked about enantiornithines. They're these sort
Remind
of...
the people.
They're a group of birds that are entirely extinct, when they were originally described in 1981, they were described as an entire separate subclass of birds. So they're very unique. They've got several unique features that unite them together, and but they show up in the early Cretaceous, and by the end of the Cretaceous, they're all extinct.
Okay.
And we don't have, unless Shandong ornipes, the zygodactyl track, is an enantiornithine track, we have no track record of enantiornithines. Everything is ornithoran, everything is water marginal, everything is shorebird-like, wader-like, web-footed, duck-like, whatever. We don't have any record of anything that really even remotely looks like an arboreal bird. Nothing that we see has the, very narrow angle of divarication. Remember I talked about that, the splay of the toes, which you see in perching birds, because it's like what James said. If you have herons that are perching in trees, it's hysterical. The toes go everywhere. They're really awkward. So perching birds have this really low angle of divarication, and it's easier for them to grab onto things, hold things. So we don't see any of that in the track record in the Cretaceous. We know it exists because we get the body fossils of all the enantiornithines, but they have a really weird foot morphology. It's very bizarre. So, but we don't see that in the trace fossil record. We would look at tracks and be like, this has practically no fourth toe and a giant second toe. It's an enantiornithine. We don't see that at all.
So, I mean, taking Roy's paper,
let's pull back to the paper.
Yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
I kind of went off on a tangent.
I mean, in what way, what problems are there in terms of assigning behaviour to things that are completely extinct and have no modern analogues? If this is the cornerstone of what you need to be doing with trace fossils from a biological perspective, what problems are you going to have when you have completely unique morphologies?
That's a really good question. And I guess like the best example to use for this would be things like dinosaurs. We don't really have modern analogs of dinosaurs. People have talked about using elephants and
There might be homologs. There's no analogues.
God damn it, you know what I meant. It's late.
I know what you meant. Don't worry. I'm responding to Curtis's facial expression.
I hate everyone here.
No,
I
you
know.
don't.
Now I don't even feel like talking anymore.
Okay, well, you were talking about the fact that we sometimes have non-modern analogs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That we can try and find things that might be functionally similar, but
There's
obviously-
still going to be
An
problems.
elephant to a sauropod.
Yeah, elephant to a sauropod is a good
Yeah.
example.
Yeah, but I mean, there's still going to be some problems with that.
Elephants
There's
don't have a 12-foot neck.
that, and they don't have a long tail either. So really one of the best ways to sort of do this, I guess, to start looking at behavior is to start quantifying things. Do all the measurements. Do things like stride length, pace length, pace width, pace angulation. This can sort of help you step back and go, okay, we've got this stride length for this trackway from here to here, but all of a sudden it changes, and we get a longer stride length or a shorter stride length. What does that mean? Well, let's look at our modern analog. Well, when it has a longer stride length, it's running. Okay, well, could that be the case here?
Yeah. And you make educated hypotheses based upon the modern.
There's no way to 100% know that we had a bird in the Cretaceous that was probing.
Yeah.
But by God, it looks identical to the probe marks that we see in today. It's logical. It's a best guess to say, these birds look just like modern birds. Maybe they were behaving the same way.
And typically, these kind of stuff, if you were to get any trace markers that you couldn't fit to anything modern, then that would be evidence that these things are behaving in ways that you can't predict.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's a best guess hypothesis. Guesses is always like a poorly, an unfortunately maligned word.
Best hypothesis.
But it's a best hypothesis for what you have at the given time.
Yeah.
And the key thing as well is that behavior is, as we've stated, behavior is exceedingly convergent, and behavior will be linked intrinsically to what you can and cannot do functionally. And so basically, once you have an idea of the anything weird is probably due to function, because it's highly unlikely that you have unique behaviors that have never existed again, to my mind. There's only so many ways you can do a certain thing. And to sort of bring up a paper I read the other day with a surprise third contender for something to talk about, No,
you're not doing that. You're not bringing in a surprise third contender. There's no surprise witness. Go ahead. What the fuck?
Objection!
Overruled.
Let him bring the puppet in.
I was trying to go for Phoenix Wright, but it didn't work.
Yeah, instead he went for Franklin.
There's a paper just came out in BMC Biology, and it's to do with mass molting in Burgess shale animals.
Okay.
They've interpreted a ton. Now, these things, interestingly, aren't trace fossils because they're biological in nature.
Yeah.
Right, just like eggs aren't trace fossils.
Yeah, although eggs do have their own taxonomy. They're called Urotaxa, which is the dumbest thing I have ever heard.
Urotaxa is
Urotaxa.
Urotaxa. Nice.
When this paper came out, I'm on a mailing list, and I asked, and so basically they're saying, to get ahead of myself, they were saying that these are molts, and this showed that there must have been some kind of chemical communication going on between these animals, because when things molt in mass today, it's always because they have received a stimulus, and then they release pheromones or chemicals or something that means everything molts. I asked, could this be stress molting? I've noticed in the lab, when you capture a spider in a tube, it'll invariably molt within a day or two. A lot of people chimed in saying that their crustaceans will molt at the drop of a hat. You change temperature, you stress them out, just moving them to another cage will molt them.
So arthropods are fashion victims. They just like to change their...
Fashion is a form of something so hideous that you have to change it every 6 months, to maul an Oscar Wilde quote.
Oscar Wilde was great.
Either the drapes go or I do. Dying quote.
Yes. And I said, well, could they be stress molts? But at the same time, said, of course, you'd expect, considering this was because this preservation occurred because they were swamped by sediment, you'd get them half coming out the molts. And that was the reply. They decided these probably weren't stress molts simply because you don't have things half coming out the molt. But that's another source of rare behaviour that you can get this sort of thing on. And it's in some arthropods you'll get drag traces which have been interpreted as molting traces, because some arthropods will either flip on their backs if they're marine, or just crawl really close to the ground and try to use the ground as friction to drag the exuviae off them. And this is something else you can also see in trace fossils.
Cool.
Interesting.
So I guess getting back to Plotnick's paper, he's proposing... I mean, he's not really actually proposing, let's say, a pathway for revision, but
he's proposing everybody shut the fuck up and get along.
He's proposing a direction that a pathway needs to be proposed, I guess.
To basically join the two branches of the same thing together.
Yes.
To join the paleo-ichnotaxonomy
and
with
modern
the modern
behavioral
studies. Yeah.
And I think that's a really fruitful avenue for research, and it's
Yeah.
definitely something that should be pursued. do you wonder? I guess at how a paper like this could be received. Like
People will hate it.
that's depressing.
Yeah.
I think the
How dare you tell us what we've been doing is wrong?
the ignotaxonomists that Amanda, when I saw this paper, I said it to you and goes, "This is what you're doing."
Yeah.
You know, I mean, those ignotaxonomists that invest in behaviour are going to really like it.
Yes.
Those that aren't interested in behaviour aren't going to read it.
Yeah, actually, I take back what I said. They're not going to hate it. They're just going to ignore it.
And those behavioural ecologists are probably going to be very concerned about assigning trace makers to trackways, I think is where they're going to come from on that.
Yeah.
But this is one of the reasons why I think you should potentially start categorizing and labeling extant trackways as a way of bringing them together. It might not necessarily be best practice to most people's minds, but you need to treat everything equally.
Yeah, like you could get plaster casts as holotypes.
Yeah.
It's
I've
not
been
perfect,
doing
but
that.
it's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly there's modern behavioral studies for Ichnology for comparative work that have done just that.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing as part of one of my chapters.
Yeah. And I mean, saying that people always know what's making them, only to some degree. I mean, a lot of because here's something I was always interested in asking you, Amanda, and it's easy what you're doing with chickens because they're chickens, so you've been around people.
Chickens.
But like any experiment, if the animals, if you change the animal's life habit, like put them in a cage, you're going to change their behavior potentially.
Well,
you influence.
Well, you saw my talk on last weekend.
Yeah.
And you know
But
what
the audience hasn't, so.
Well, okay.
Nor does half the people in this room.
Here's the essential gist of what I'm doing. And I'm essentially creating a remote system that you can put anywhere that will collect tracks. This is very vague, quite on purpose, because I'm still working on it. But essentially it's something where I can leave and we can set it in a completely natural environment and I will not be influencing the behavior.
Yeah, I mean, and from what you're doing and the things you're doing, I can see that works.
It'll work on anything.
Well, I mean, the thing is you're going to elicit certain types of behaviour that you won't get from other things. Like if you're trying to do it with cats, the first thing a cat's going to do is go up and doof it.
Well,
and you're going to
yes,
get tons of doofing behavior, but so you're going to now understand doofing behavior really well, but you're not going to get standard hunting behavior because all they're going to be doing is doofing it.
But cats will go up and doof anything.
I know.
They'll go up to trees and doof the trees.
But so while you're going to record the behavior perfectly well, I think the types of behavior you're going to get might be in a response to whatever you've set out there to some degree, and that's why you can't use that kind of study to do.
See here,
amount of times behavior occurs, but the behaviors you get, you could totally study.
See, I'm going to also. Okay, I understand where you're coming from in that, but where I'm going to somewhat disagree with you on that case because
slang term referring to outdoor dance party in Australia or New Zealand.
Okay, that's
Thank you, Wikipedia.
That's not what we meant.
What the hell that was?
What is doofing behavior?
For us non-cat friendly people.
When my cat comes up to a new person, he immediately runs his head into them and rubs his cheek against them.
Oh, scent marking.
Yeah, it's doofing. I always say he's doofed you.
I'm just thinking specifically in regards to things in vivariums.
Yes, yeah. But if you're going out and doing a completely natural experiment,
I preferred my knowledge when I thought your cat was producing an outdoor dance party in Australia. It was apparently hardcore techno music.
You can continue to think that whatever makes
like
you happy.
2 hours of men at work.
Just the song Overkill over and over and over again, which is
Down
actually
Under.
really ironic because that's overkill. It's overkill of overkill.
No, it's just
You
Land
can't
Down
overkill
Under on
overkill.
repeat.
Anyway,
Land Down Under.
anyway,
That's not
Dirty deeds done
That's-
Dutch.
That's
AC/DC.
CDC.
Anyway, so that's my opinion on where all this is headed and where it should be headed. We need to move more into looking at sort of a union between the current methods in ichnology and a more biology, behavioral ecology kind of outlook.
Okay. Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that's definitely also the sentiment of Plotnick's paper as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's something I agree with, but you've got to understand that at least 3 of us here are biologists that happen to do paleontology. So, and somebody's a chemist that shoots fucking lasers at things.
Booyah.
None of us are stratigraphers, and I think those are the people that'll probably get most grumpy about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
and to be fair, there is important information biologically that can be taken from
Yeah.
paleoenvironmental reconstructions.
Definitely.
One
I
of the
won't
one of
argue
the
with that.
one of the big applications for trace fossil stuff is in terms of well borings and what environment you're in and how close you are to likely to be to where oil's going to start
Yeah.
coming in. I mean, that's one of the
That's-
big economic
That's a big
applications
thing.
for
Yep.
it. I kind of get grumpy when Paleo Society funds these projects, but but I mean it's a worthwhile and very important, and that stems from the paleo-environmental side of things, and it's where a lot of the history is, and it's where a
Yeah.
lot of the when I use it most, unless I'm making up my own interpretations or something I happen to have seen, it's where most of the information comes from. for me.
Paleoenvironmental informations for environmental reconstructions help us to understand how environmental catastrophes can affect life on Earth. Because if we see major changes in paleoenvironment, then we can interpret that there's been a massive environmental and possibly ecological change.
Well, I mean, Richard Twitchett has shown that all of the primary productivity trace fossils just die at the end of the Permian and don't come back for about 30 or 40 million years.
That
Yeah.
doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
Big bad shit happens at the end of
Yeah.
the Permian.
Yeah.
Murder on the fucking Orient Express, if you believe some people.
Everyone did it.
Everyone did it. Yeah, every single life basically was conspired against by every single element.
The difference is I'm pretty sure the buffet cart stayed open on the Orient Express.
Yeah, sure. But
Well, the
sadly,
buffet cart really did stay open, though.
the closing of the buffet cart is
There's
probably
just
one of the
nobody
things that
that takes
majorly affected the
advantage of
Permian
it.
mass extinction.
Yeah.
No, it was still open.
That's part of the reduction of primary productivity extinction model, which I often like to refer to as the things die because they die model.
I mean, here's the thing. It's okay to recognise there's a reduction in primary productivity, but if you've got a mass extinction, that happens anyway. The timing of it is difficult to pin down.
Yeah, it's expected that during a mass extinction event, you might decrease your primary productivity.
Yeah.
So does anyone have anything else to add to this reinvention of Ichnology?
I want to talk about mermaids.
Shut up, James.
What the fuck do you want
What?
to talk about? with
Animal
mermaid?
Planet had another fucking mermaid documentary.
A mermaid.
This
Really?
is why I told him to shut up. We don't need to go into this right now.
People, once again, are thinking it's real
Okay.
because they don't make it clear.
So
You know,
wait.
it's almost 11:45, and I'd like to go home.
Mermaids.
No, we're talking about mermaids
For the
now.
record, mermaids are not real, and there is no evidence of mermaids.
Yes,
Accurate.
that's something
They're just
we can all
monkeys
agree
sewn to
on.
Yeah,
Fish.
monkeys.
Fish.
But they're monkeys sewed to
Yeah.
manatees. I thought.
No, fish.
I mean,
Okay.
no, people used to think dugongs.
Were
mermaids.
Dugongs.
Dugong.
No, dugong's how I pronounce it, but it's also a Pokemon. Dugongs. I mean, they were called. I mean, like actually, the main one's the Stellar sea cow, which is now extinct because people ate it. They used to.
People ate mermaids.
Yeah, they used to think they were mermaids, which then makes me wonder how lonely sailors got on
Yes.
long voyages.
Yes.
So-
What happens on the boat stays on the boat.
But mermaids aren't real, and
Yeah.
we can all agree on that.
And Animal Planet just make cryptozoology things in order to get people to watch because real animals are apparently boring.
Unless, of course, they're being mistreated or they eat people.
Meerkat Manor is amazing. Oh god, that thing you made me watch.
Made you watch.
Okay, so
I don't know. I
just
don't want to
to
know.
cap-
I
to
don't
cap
want
this
to
off-
know.
To cap this off, there was a program about a guy that kept lizards, and they found him dead, and the lizards ate him, and they're like, the lizards killed him. But he probably died from a heart attack and then was eaten by lizards, because, let's face it, any animal gets hungry enough is going to eat any source of food available.
Now
And
remember, Amanda, in 20 years, when your cats eat you after you've had a stroke.
I don't
First of all,
care.
Randall, that's not funny. 20 years is super young. Anyway.
And
That's all you had. That's
and
it.
on that glorious note,
Yeah, I've been Kurt,
Randall?
Amanda,
And James.
and we're signing off.
you
What?
couldn't come up with 3 reasons.
No, I could come up with. I could totally come up with 3 reasons. The
Your
third.
third reason was, eh.
Well, because I wasn't going to start getting an argument with Randall on air about how that is just inappropriate.